ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaskar, my dear friends. I am starting series of videos on the life and teachings of Swami Brahamananda, a direct disciple of Paramahamsa Ramakrishna. He was a realized soul, and to talk about or to write about the biography of an illumined soul is very difficult, if not impossible, for his is preeminently an inner life. True, he may engage in certain external activities, he may achieve the kind of success which impresses the outer world, but all these activities and achievements, including even his spoken and written teachings, will fall far short of and fail to express the real man. An ordinary professor or scholar teaches out of his accumulated learning. Such a man's scholarship is far greater than the man himself. That is to say, he may teach the loftiest truths theoretically without having made them a part of his own life and experience. A man of spiritual wisdom also teaches these truths, not theoretically, but out of his own experience. Nevertheless, the expression of these truths in words cannot possibly correspond to the vastness of his inner knowledge, which is inexpressible because it is transcendental. We know a man with our mind and senses, but our mind and senses cannot reveal to us the nature of an illumined soul. In order to be able fully to understand such a soul, a man must himself be illumined. When you go into the presence of one of these great beings, something very wonderful happens. His mere presence gives you, as it were, a super sense which enables you to recognize the greatness which is in him. Maharaj, as Swami Brahamananda was called, used to give us that presence whenever we were with him. Our minds were lifted up and caught glimpses of his inner nature, but these glimpses were only partial. We were aware that the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna who themselves illumined souls could see more in Maharaj than we, his disciples, ever saw. Swami Ramakrishnananda, founder and head of the Ramakrishna monastery in Madras, once introduced Maharaj to his disciples, there saying, "None of you have seen Sri Ramakrishna himself, but now you see Maharaj, and that is the same thing." On another occasion, a devotee brought fruit which he wanted to offer to Sri Ramakrishna in the shrine. Swami Ramakrishnananda told him to offer it to Maharaj and said to offer this fruit to Maharaj is as good as offering it to Sri Ramakrishna. One day, see, this narration is by the disciple of Swami Brahamananda. His name is Swami Brahamananda. One day, I hesitated to accept something that Maharaj told me. Swami Shivananda was present at the time and he agreed with Maharaj immediately. I did not like this. Later I talked to Swami Shivananda alone and more or less accused him of being a yes man to Maharaj. Swami Shivananda laughed and said, "My boy, you see in Maharaj only Maharaj, but we see the external form of Maharaj with nothing inside it but God. Whatever Maharaj tells you comes directly from God." It should be remembered that this statement was not made by a mere ignorant enthusiast, but by one who was himself an illumined soul. Its truth was not clear to me at the time, but later I began to understand and believe it because of a talk which I had with Maharaj himself. One day he asked me to look at the almanac and find an auspicious date for his departure from Madras. As I did so, I could not help smiling. Maharaj noticed this and asked me why I was amused. I replied, "Well, Maharaj, you always go through this routine whenever you plan to go anywhere, but then you suddenly make up your mind to leave on some other day." At this, Maharaj said, "Do you think I do anything according to my own will? The devotees insist upon fixing some date for my going, so to avoid constant pestering, I fix a tentative date, but I do not move or do anything until I know the will of the Lord." "Do you mean to say," I asked, "that you are always guided by the will of God?" Maharaj replied, "Yes, myself." "Well, Maharaj, I too may think or feel that I am doing the will of God when actually I am only following my own inclinations and attempting them to God's will. Is not that what you do?" Maharaj replied, "No, my child, it is not the same." Myself: "Then do you mean to say that you actually see God and talk to Him directly and know His will?" Maharaj: "Yes, I wait until I know His will directly and He tells me what I should do." Myself: "For everything you do?" Maharaj: "Yes, for everything I do, I have the direct guidance of God." Myself means Swami Brahamananda, disciple of Swami Brahamananda. Myself: "And do you accept only those disciples he wants you to accept?" Maharaj: "Yes." After this talk with him, I began to find some meaning in his peculiar way of acting. For example, whenever any of us would ask his advice, he would say, "Wait, my brain is not working today," or "My stomach is upset. I will answer tomorrow." Sometimes many tomorrows would pass before the disciple got any definite answer. But when Maharaj did finally speak, there was always a special power behind his words. How does he know the will of God? Does he go into samadhi every time before he knows it? This was the thought that continually crossed my mind, but not daring to ask him, I wanted, hoping somehow to get an answer. Then one day I was discussing with another disciple the spiritual visions of Gopal's mother, a woman disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. She had been given this name because she used to see Gopal, the boy Krishna, playing with her, walking beside her, and calling her mother. Many other of her visions are recorded by Swami Sardananda in his Life of Sri Ramakrishna. I expressed my opinion that these visions of Gopal's mother belong to the transcendental plane and that I did not believe she had actually seen Sri Krishna with her bodily eyes. Maharaj, who was sitting in his room, overheard me. He came out and said rather sarcastically, "Ah, so you are omniscient." But Maharaj, I asked, how can one see God in the external world with bodily eyes? Maharaj then explained that a man who has attained samadhi and reached the transcendental plane receives divine sight. He then can see God with closed eye in the superconsciousness of samadhi and also with open eyes while fully conscious of the external world. He added that to an enlightened man there is no longer any line of division between matter and spirit. What you see as matter is really Brahma. In the Upanishads, we read that a knower of Brahma becomes Brahma. What is it that attracts people to a man of God? Young and old, boys and girls, men, women and children, saints and sinners, all felt an indefinable attraction to Maharaj, even if they did not in the least understand what was meant by a knower of Brahma. When I first met Maharaj, I was a boy of 18. I did not know anything about God or the realization of God, yet I felt drawn to him as to a long lost friend who was very near and dear to me. I had never felt such a love before in my life. It was the love of parents and the love of a friend all in one. Everyone had the same experience. Once I asked Swami Subodhananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the reason for this all-satisfying love which emanated from Maharaj. The Swami replied, God is love. Maharaj has realized God, therefore he is full of love. You did not have to be pure-hearted or spiritually minded to love Maharaj. Even the most depraved natures felt this love when they came into his presence, and many of them were transformed into saints. Maharaj did not talk to everybody about God or spiritual matters or philosophical truths. He would come down, as it were, to the level of each individual. He became that person. He had the power to uplift a man without his even knowing it. And when that person left his presence, he was bathed in love and purity. When you were in the presence of Maharaj, you completely forgot yourself. You felt you were in another world where there was no worry or grief. and where man was not man but divine. You were filled with a peculiar joy which you could neither explain nor understand. Maharaj's bearing was stately and regal. He was tall and well built, and his face was serene and joyful. His eyes were deep and seemed always to be gazing into the infinite. Whenever he looked at you, you felt that he was probing the depths of your innermost nature and that he knew all your weaknesses and failings. But somehow you did not mind this being known through and through, because those eyes were so full of mercy and love. We never feared to be known by him. Then there were other times when, though his eyes were wide open, it seemed as if the universe no longer existed for him. He seemed to be living in a different world altogether. His hands and feet were beautifully formed, and they possessed a peculiar attraction. His back strikingly resembled the back of Sri Ramakrishna Swami. Swami Turiyananda once told me how many years after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, he saw Maharaj from behind walking in the grounds of the Belur monastery and mistook him for Sri Ramakrishna himself. Once in a crowded railway station, I overheard a man who had been observing Maharaj exclaim to a friend, "Look at that man! What part of India does he come from? He is not like a Madrasi or a Parsi or a Bengali or a Punjabi. Can you guess his nationality?" And the other answered, "No, I cannot, but you can see very well that he is a man of God." Now, childhood and the life with the Master, that is, childhood of Swami Brahamananda and how he lived with the Guruji, his Guru Paramahansa Ramakrishna. Swami Brahamananda was born on January 21, 1863 at Sikra, a village near Calcutta, Bengal. His parents were Ananda Mohan Ghosh and Kailas Kamini. His mother was devoted to Krishna and she spent most of her time in prayer, worship and meditation. Maharaj was her only son. Being a devotee of Krishna, she named him Rakhal, the shepherd boy. She passed away when Rakhal was just 5 years old. Rakhal liked being with other children and played all kinds of games with them. He was especially fond of playing church. He would mold a clay image of Divine Mother and worship her with his playmates. During religious festivals, he would take his seat behind the priest, and sometimes while watching the worship, he would be filled with a fervor of devotion and become absorbed in the thought of Divine Mother. Ananda Mohan loved gardening as a child. Rakhal would work with his father and learn gardening from him at an early age. He was also fond of fishing and would sit patiently with his fishing rod for hours by the pond. Even in later life, we saw that he had never lost these two early enthusiasms of childhood, gardening and fishing. From boyhood he was a lover of music. He learned songs about Divine Mother and Krishna. He and his friends would go into a mango grove and sing these songs together in Chorus. In later years, he encouraged his disciples to sing devotional songs, and he would always keep in his company a few who were expert musicians. Wherever he went, praises of the Lord would be sung. When Rakhal had finished his studies at the village primary school, he went to Calcutta to begin grammar school. He was then 12 years old. Attached to the school was an athletic club which interested Rakhal very much. The members of the club were young boys, and Naren, little known as Vivekananda, was their leader. This was how Rakhal and Naren met. They were of the same age and became very fond of each other. Later, both boys became pupils at gymnasium directed by Mr. Guha. At this period, Kesav Chandra Sen was exercising a great influence over the youth of Bengal by his powerful oratory, his fervent devotion, and his vast knowledge of Eastern and Western religions. He was the leader of the Brahma Samaj. He preached the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of a man. In his talks, he would quote the Upanishads and the Christian Bible. His new line of approach revived an interest in religion amongst the educated classes of Bengal. The creed of the Brahmo Samaj was that theistic conception of the Godhead, which is the only creed of Christianity and which is also to be found among many other conceptions in the Hindu scriptures. Kesav denounced as polytheism, the Hindu cult of many gods and goddesses, although these are in reality merely aspects of the one Brahma. He was opposed to the worship of images in the temples. Naren and Rakhal joined the movement and subscribed to its creed. Rakhal used to spend most of his time in prayer and contemplation, neglecting his studies. God is our Father, our very own. How shall I reach Him? This was the only thought that occupied his mind. Sri Ramakrishna later used to say of him, Rakhal was born with an intense love for God. Such a love is usually acquired only after a man has practiced spiritual disciplines for many years or many lives. Rakhal regularly attended the services of the Brahmo Samaj. His prayer that God might be revealed to him continued incessantly like the act of breathing. Rakhal was not doing very well at school, so that by that time he reached his 16th birthday, his father was worried about the boy's future. He attributed the neglect of his studies to the emotionalism of adolescence, which had turned his son's mind towards God. If Rakhal were married, the father thought to himself, his mind would be brought down to earth. He would have to consider taking up a career and providing for his wife, and therefore he would study harder. So he arranged for Rakhal's marriage to a young girl named Visveswari. Kesav Chandra Sen was the first to preach publicly the greatness of Sri Ramakrishna. Devotees began to flock to the temple of Dakshineshwar to visit the master. Among them were Manmohan Mitra and Shama Sundari, the brother and mother of Visveswari. At the time of Rakhal's marriage, these two were already ardent devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, whom they regarded as an incarnation of Sri Chaitanya. Thus it came about that the worldly influence of marriage combined with the spiritual influence of Keshav brought Rakhal to the feet of his future beloved master. It was natural that Manmohan should introduce Rakhal, his new brother-in-law, to Sri Ramakrishna. For some time before their visit, the master had spiritual visions concerning his future disciple. Once Sri Ramakrishna prayed to Divine Mother, Mother, I want someone to be my constant companion. Bring me a boy who is pure-hearted and intentionally devoted to you. A few days later, he saw in mystic vision a boy standing under the banyan tree in the temple grounds. On another occasion, this same boy appeared to him in a different manner, to quote the master's own words. A few days before Rakhal came to me, mother placed a little boy on my lap and said, "This is your son." At first I was startled. My son? Mother smiled at this and made me understand that I was not to have a son in the ordinary sense, but that this boy would be my spiritual son, one who would live up to the highest ideal of renunciation. From this hour onward, Sri Ramakrishna waited eagerly for the coming of his spiritual son. A few moments before Rakhal actually arrived, he had another vision. Suddenly he saw a 100-petaled lotus blooming on the bosom of the Ganges, each of its petals shining with exquisite loveliness. On the lotus, two boys were dancing with anklets on their feet. One of them was Sri Krishna himself, the other was the same boy he had seen in his earlier vision. Their dance was indescribably beautiful. Every movement they made seemed to splash foam, as it were from an ocean of sweetness. Sri Ramakrishna was lost in ecstasy. Just then a boat arrived carrying Manmohan and Rakhal. Sri Ramakrishna looked at Rakhal in bewilderment. What is this? He thought to himself, here is the boy I saw standing under the banyan tree. Here is the boy mother placed on my lap. Here is the boy I saw just now dancing on the lotus with Sri Krishna. This is the pure-hearted companion I prayed for to mother. Sri Ramakrishna regarded Rakhal for a few moments in silence. Then he smilingly remarked to Manmohan, there are wonderful possibilities in this boy. After this, the master talked to Rakhal for some time as though he were an old friend. What is your name? He asked. Rakhal answered, Rakhal Chandra Ghosh. Meaning the name Rakhal. Sri Ramakrishna was deeply excited and muttered to himself, Rakhal, the shepherd boy of Vrindavan, the polymate of Sri Krishna. Then in a sweet, affectionate voice, he said, come and see me again. In the presence of the master, Rakhal had experienced a peculiar feeling of joy, love and intense attraction. As he left the temple grounds, that voice in all its sweetness kept echoing within his heart, come and see me again. He knew that at last he had met a man who had seen and known God. Rakhal went back to his home and to school, but he could not forget his visit to the master. Sri Ramakrishna filled all his thoughts and he was impatient to see him again. A few days later, after school hours, he went alone to Dakshineswar. The master welcomed him eagerly and said with great affection, Why did not you come back to me sooner? I have been waiting for you. Rakhal did not know what to answer. He looked at the master and felt that same ecstatic joy he felt like a little child sitting at the feet of God, the Father of all. From that day onward, the relationship between these two was established. Rakhal saw in Rama Krishna Father, Mother and God. Sri Rama Krishna saw in Rakhal the divine child. Rakhal's visits to the master became more and more frequent. Sometimes he lived at the temple for days together. While he was there, his mind entirely forgot the everyday world and became absorbed in the consciousness of God and His presence. He felt himself to be the eternal companion of his divine master. Recalling these early days with Rakhal, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell his intimate disciples, no words can describe Rakhal's spiritual mood at that time. He was living in a trance, as it were. He was like a little child, helpless in its mother's arms and surrendering itself completely to her, always conscious of the divine relationship. And when he was near me, I also was transported into a higher spiritual consciousness. I used to play with him just as Yasoda, the divine mother, played with her divine child Krishna. Rakhal's father tried in many ways to bring his son's mind back to the interest of a worldly life. He gave him strict orders not to go to the temple at Dakshineswar. When his advice and threats proved of no avail, he had Rakhal locked in the house. Rakhal longed to go to his master, and Sri Ramakrishna prayed earnestly to the Divine Mother that all the obstacles in Rakhal's spiritual path might be removed. One day Anand Mohana made Rakhal sit beside him in his study while he looked over some legal documents. As soon as the Rakhal noticed that his father was deeply absorbed in the work, he seized the opportunity to slip out of the room and hurried off to his master. Ananda Mohan knew that Rakhal must have gone to Sri Ramakrishna, but for some days he could not. He could do nothing because he had to attend to a lawsuit in the courts. As soon as he had time, however, he went to Dakshineswar, intending to take his son home. When Rakhal saw his father coming, he was frightened and wanted to hide, but Sri Ramakrishna would not let him. So Rakhal, following his master's advice, went to meet his father and greeted him with unusual affection and reverence. It was then that Ananda Mohan had a change of heart. Instead of insisting on Rakhal's returning home, he simply requested Sri Ramakrishna to send the boy occasionally to see him. So Rakhal began living with the master at Dakshineswar. One day his young wife came to the temple with her mother. Looking at her, Sri Ramakrishna said, she is born with a divine nature. She will never be an obstacle to Rakhal's spiritual progress. The master then sent word to Holy Mother, wife of Sri Ramakrishna, who was also living at the temple, that she should bless the young girl and welcome her as her daughter-in-law. After receiving the blessings, the mother and daughter returned home. Rakhal, with a carefree mind, devoted himself to a contemplative life and the service of his beloved Guru. One day Rakhal told Sri Ramakrishna that he felt very hungry, but there was no food in the place, and Sri Ramakrishna became greatly concerned. Leaving his room, he went to the bank of the Ganges and shouted, "Oh "O Gordasi, come soon, my Rakhal is hungry." Shortly after this, Gordasi, a woman disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, arrived by boat with a few other disciples bringing food. Sri Ramakrishna was as happy as a child and called Rakhal, saying, "Here is food, now go and eat, you are very hungry." Rakhal felt embraced and said in a low voice, "Yes, I am hungry, but do you have to advertise it?" Sri Ramakrishna innocently replied, "If you are hungry, what is wrong in saying so? Go and eat now." Once while Rakhal was messaging Sri Ramakrishna with oil, he begged the master to grant him the power of transcendental vision. At first, Sri Ramakrishna took no notice of his request and remained silent. When Rakhal persisted, the master suddenly turned and spoke to him very harshly. Rakhal felt hurt and angry. He smashed the bottle of oil on the ground and ran away. But as he reached the gate of the temple, his feet suddenly seemed paralyzed. He could not move another step. Helplessly he sat down on the road, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, Sri Ramakrishna sent his nephew Ramlal to find Rakhal and calm his anger. Ramlal fetched Rakhal, who slowly returned to the master's presence. Sri Ramakrishna looked at him smilingly. "You see, you could not go outside that circle I drew around you." Rakhal felt ashamed and remained silent. A few moments later, Sri Ramakrishna went into ecstasy and began to speak to the Divine Mother. "Oh Mother," he murmured, "I know you have given him 1/16th part of your power, and that power in him will benefit all mankind." Then in the same ecstatic mood, he addressed Rakhal, saying, "You were angry with me. Do you know why I made you angry? There was a purpose in it. Medicine acts only after the sore has been opened." He continued, "Have faith that God is also with form and can be seen in that way. God is revealed to the man who has controlled his mind." A few days later, while massaging his master's feet, Rakhal suddenly lost his external senses and was transported into that supersensuous realm which he had longed to experience in later years. Sri Ramakrishna used to point out the exact spot in the room where Rakhal went into ecstasy for the first time. A neighbor once said to her, "It seems that Rakhal went into ecstasy for the first time." Wife. A neighbor once said to her, "It seems your son-in-law is turning into a monk. Why don't you try to bring his mind back to the world for your daughter's sake?" "What can I do?" Shama Sundari answered. "Everything depends on the will of the Lord. If my son-in-law becomes a monk, I shall regard it as a great blessing." Soon after this, Shama Sundari came with her daughter to visit Rakhal and asked him to return home. The meeting took place in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, who remained silent throughout. Later, the master described it to his other disciples and said, "Rakhal has now reached a true spiritual discrimination. I know he will no longer be attached to the world. He has realized the emptiness of earthly pleasures." The master felt, however, that Rakhal had a duty to his wife and told him to visit her from time to time. Rakhal obeyed. Gradually his visits to his wife became longer. He felt concerned about her and her future. Finally, he came to Sri Ramakrishna and asked his advice. The master listened to everything he had to say but refused to tell him definitely which path of life he should follow. With a heavy heart, Rakhal went back to his wife and silently prayed to Sri Ramakrishna to show him the way. 3 days passed, Rakhal prayed unceasingly. Suddenly a veil was removed from his sight and he saw the divine Maya, the play of divine mother. He knew now which path to choose. He and his wife were not to be bound by the ties of marriage. He had a great mission to fulfill. He was certain now that his wife would be taken care of, and strangely enough, she also felt full of peace. So, taking leave of her, he went straight back to Dakshineshwar. The master knew exactly what had happened. Silently smiling, he welcomed home his beloved spiritual son. Sri Ramakrishna had known that Rakhal could not be bound by any earthly attachment, yet there remained in him a subtle lingering desire, a desire which could not be completely removed from his heart until it had had some satisfaction. That was why Sri Ramakrishna had sent Rakhal back to his wife. Now he knew that henceforward, Rakhal would be completely free from desire in any form. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the virtue of truthfulness is most important. If a man always speaks the truth and holds to the truth tenaciously, he will realize God, for God is truth. I prayed to the Divine Mother saying, Mother, here is knowledge, here is ignorance. Take them both and give me pure love for you. Here is purity, here is impurity. Take them both and give me pure love for you. Here is good, here is evil. Take them both and give me pure love for you. But I could not say, here is truth, here is untruth. Take them both. One day Sri Ramakrishna said to Rakhal, I can't look at you. I see a veil of ignorance over your face. Tell me, have you done anything wrong? Rakhal was greatly troubled. No matter how hard he tried, he could not remember having done anything wrong. Try to recall, Sri Ramakrishna said to his disciple. If you have told any untruth, Rakhal at once remembered and admitted that he had recently told a lie in a joking way to a friend. Sri Ramakrishna forgave him but said, never do it again. To speak the exact truth always is a most important spiritual discipline. Rakhal's enthusiasm for the spiritual life did not weaken, but after a while he ceased to meditate regularly. Sri Ramakrishna noticed this and asked him the reason. Rakhal answered, I do not always get the inspiration. My heart seems dry and I feel an emptiness. You must never neglect your meditation on that account. Sri Ramakrishna told him, make up your mind to practice spiritual disciplines, then the enthusiasm will come naturally. Those who are farmers by birth and occupation do not and cannot give up farming just because the crop failed. So you must not give up meditation even though you may not get any apparent result. You must be regular in your practice. That same day, Sri Ramakrishna went as usual to worship in the temple. Ramana. So I end the video here. Thanks you my dear friends for watching and listening this video with patience. Please like, comments and share the video and subscribe my channel. Thanks you a lot. Namaskar my dear friends. Namaste, namaste, namaste.